And one way to think about this is it strikes me that the logic of the achievement gap enthusiasts is really remarkably similar to, say, the folks who staffed OEO under President Johnson or the architects of the Great Society, that they're well-intentioned, that they have identified people who truly have gotten dealt a lousy hand and are trying to do what they can to promote equity and social justice. But Tocqueville, I think, had this right, that America is a nation where what works tends to be self-interest properly understood. And just like the overreaching of the Great Society eventually, 10, 15 years downstream led to the Reagan Revolution and the undoing of much that its architects had hoped for, I think a failure to take seriously the need to serve all of our children, to be responsive to the real and legitimate concerns of middle-class families, is taking what I think are a number of smart and good ideas around accountability and choice and teacher quality, and potentially setting them up for that same kind of failure.
The one thing that I'd point out here, just to point out one, is that the emphasis on reading and math is not because of achievement gaps, right? I mean, we could overly emphasize reading and math scores independent of achievement gaps, right? I mean, we had accountability systems where people grumped, to use Checker's word, in which they did not use achievement gaps, but still were focused on reading and math scores. So I do really fear that, and some of this concern is, we see in an education system not working, not doing enough to serve all students, and so we see policymakers, reaching out for various levers that they can potentially pull. And my fear about Rick's argument is now everything is like it's achievement gap mania. Reading and math scores, because it's the achievement gap. When, the fact is the achievement gap in the United States remains a serious and really concerning issue. To use your own language, the mile-wide chasm that is our own domestic achievement gap, this is Fordham's, America's white and Asian students perform among the world's best. Our black and Hispanic students are battling it out with OECD's worst. And I think when we still think about the size of the achievement gap, and we understand that, or at least my argument here is that we are attributing too many sort of side effects to poor policy implementation. I mean, we could use any number of examples of laws that were passed in which educators or healthcare or anything else decided to regulate too much around professional development. So this concern about the Florida example, in my mind, is also just sort of
no, so let me make a concession here.
Okay.
Concession coming, and then Josh is going to apologize for having tried to focus on wealthy suburban high districts.
So maybe more clarification, but certainly, nothing I'm saying should be taken to suggest that I want to see us retreat from being transparent and clear about performance on the LA and math. So I certainly support that. When it comes to ESE reauthorization, I certainly endorse requiring the assessment. It's true that I'm against federal accountability requirements here. I don't think, but so I think that's a point well taken. Let me give you an example, though, a very concrete example of I think the kind of policy that has alienated middle class and suburbs. Actually, so you guys were involved in this with Ed Trust, right? One of the proposals is what we call the more equitable distribution of teachers, which you guys suggest. And the problem here is that if we're trying to systematically identify good teachers so that we can move them systematically with encouragement or mandates from the federal government into classrooms and schools serving low-income children. On the one hand, that makes all the sense in the world. It's a reasonable and certainly admirable attempt to make sure that those kids get access to good teachers. The flip side of it is what you were saying to middle-class parents is we want to systematically strip mine your schools of your kids' favorite teachers and go give those teachers to someone else. I got to tell you, the only viable political strategy for getting broad-based support of school reform on that premise is to get those middle-class parents drunk. This is very explicitly an effort to advantage some kids at the cost of the others. At a minimum, we should wring our hands and argue about this in a way we haven't. At a maximum, I'd like to see us spend more time on strategies for growing the pie on the number of good teachers and less worrying about how do we reassign the limited number of teachers who we have who we think are terrific.
The Senate Help Committee is going to get this all straightened out tomorrow, by the way.
And they're going to use language like strip mine.